When you think of hillbilly cooking, what comes to mind? Maybe biscuits, cornbread, or a big pot of beans. But the truth is, the kitchens of Appalachia and rural America were once full of dinners that have almost completely vanished from memory. Meals born from survival ingenuity and the season's dishes that our grandparents ate without ever needing a cookbook. These weren't just meals. They were stories, rituals, and lifelines. Today, we're going to uncover 30 forgotten hillbilly dinners, meals that fed families through hard winters, long summers, and tough times, and that deserve to be remembered. From squirrel stew to oxtail-inspired roasts, from wild greens foraged in spring to pig's feet preserved for winter, each dish tells a story. So grab a seat at the table. It's time to taste history. Number 1. Squirrel stew. In the hills and hollers of Appalachia, squirrels were more than wildlife. They were dinner. Squirrel stew was a staple in hillbilly kitchens, born from necessity and resourcefulness. The squirrels were cleaned, cut into pieces, and browned in lard or bacon grease, then slowly simmered with potatoes, carrots, onions, and turnips. Simple seasonings like salt, black pepper, and a handful of wild herbs enhanced the earthy flavors. The stew was hearty, filling, and nourishing, stretching to feed the whole family. Each spoonful carried the essence of the land and the ingenuity of rural cooks, turning modest ingredients into a meal that was as comforting as it was sustaining. Number 2. Cornmeal mush with pan-fried catfish. Cornmeal mush was a humble staple in hillbilly kitchens, simple, filling, and endlessly versatile. Boiled into a thick porridge, it could be sliced and pan-fried until golden, creating a crispy, hearty base for dinner. One of the most beloved pairings was pan-fried catfish, often caught in local rivers or creeks. The fish was dredged in seasoned cornmeal and fried in hot lard or oil until the exterior was perfectly crisp, while the meat inside remained tender and flaky. Served together, the mush absorbed the savory drippings of the catfish, turning two simple ingredients into a meal that was more than sustenance. It was a celebration of local ingredients, ingenuity, and rural tradition. Number 3. Poke salad with bacon dressing. In the springtime hills, poke salad was a treasured ritual in hillbilly kitchens. Young poke leaves foraged from the fields had to be boiled multiple times to remove their natural bitterness and toxins, making them safe and edible. Once prepared, they were chopped and tossed with crispy bacon or a smoky bacon dressing, sometimes with a touch of vinegar or onions to balance the flavor. This wild green became a hearty, nutritious dish that celebrated the first tastes of the season. More than just food, poke salad connected families to the land, teaching patience and respect for nature, while transforming a simple foraged green into a flavorful, cherished meal that carried generations of Appalachian tradition. Number 4. Liver and onions with sorghum glaze. Liver was a staple in hillbilly kitchens, inexpensive yet packed with nutrition. Sliced and pan-fried with onions until tender, it became a hearty centerpiece for any meal. What made this dish memorable was the addition of a sweet, earthy sorghum glaze, which balanced the rich, slightly metallic flavor of the liver. Simple seasonings like salt, pepper, and a dash of vinegar elevated the dish without masking its rustic charm. Served alongside potatoes or cornbread, it was filling and economical, embodying the ingenuity of rural cooks. More than sustenance, liver and onions with sorghum glaze reflected a tradition of making the most of every ingredient while creating comforting, deeply flavorful meals for the whole family. Number 5. Ramps and cornbread casserole. Ramps, the wild, pungent onions of early spring, were a prized ingredient in hillbilly kitchens. Chopped and layered into a cornmeal-based casserole with milk, eggs, and sometimes bits of bacon or cheese, they created a dish that was earthy, fragrant, and deeply nourishing. Baked slowly until golden on top, the casserole blended the sharp flavor of the ramps with the comforting sweetness of cornbread, turning simple ingredients into a satisfying meal. It was more than dinner. It was a seasonal celebration, marking the first fresh greens of the year, connecting families to the land, and proving that even humble forage foods could be elevated into memorable, comforting meals. Number 6. Pot liquor soup with salt pork. Pot liquor, the flavorful broth left after boiling greens, was a cornerstone of hillbilly kitchens. Simmered with salt pork, onions, and root vegetables like potatoes or turnips, it became a hearty soup that nourished families through long winters. Every drop carried the essence of the greens and the smoky richness of the pork, often sopped up with cornbread to soak up every bit of flavor. This meal was both economical and satisfying, turning simple, leftover ingredients into something extraordinary. More than just sustenance, potlucker soup was a lesson in thrift, resourcefulness, and culinary ingenuity, showing generations how to transform humble ingredients into a meal that comforted the body and honored tradition. Number 7. Chitlins with vinegar and hot peppers. Chitlins, pig intestines, were one of the most labor-intensive yet cherished dishes in hillbilly kitchens. Thoroughly cleaned and slow-cooked with onions, vinegar, and hot peppers, they transformed humble, discarded cuts into a deeply flavorful, tender meal. Preparation could take hours, often passed down through generations, with elders teaching the younger ones patience and care. Served at holidays or special gatherings, chitlins carried more than taste. They carried tradition, resilience, and community. Though the aroma could be polarizing, the payoff was a dish that connected families to the past, celebrated resourcefulness, and proved that even the most overlooked ingredients could be transformed into a meal rich with history and flavor. Number 8. Fried mush and sausage links. Cornmeal mush, boiled into a thick porridge, was a staple in hillbilly kitchens, affordable, filling, and versatile. Once cooled and sliced, it could be pan-fried until golden and crispy, creating a hearty base for dinner. One of the most beloved pairings was smoked or fresh sausage links, fried alongside the mush, so the savory drippings soaked into every bite. Served together, the combination was simple but satisfying, stretching modest ingredients into a meal that could feed the whole family. This dish embodied the ingenuity of rural cooking, proving that even the most basic pantry staples could be transformed into comfort food rich with flavor. Number 9. Homemade sauerkraut and ham hocks. Fermented sauerkraut was a cornerstone of hillbilly preservation, providing tangy, flavorful vegetables during winter months. Slowly simmered with smoky ham hocks, onions, and sometimes a touch of sugar or spices, the dish became a hearty, nourishing dinner. The ham hocks infused the sauerkraut with rich, savory depth while tenderizing the cabbage, turning simple preserved ingredients into a meal full of flavor. Served with cornbread or boiled potatoes, it was economical yet satisfying. Number 10. Pan-fried frog legs with grits. Frog legs were a delicacy in hillbilly kitchens, prized for their tender, mild meat. Lightly dusted in seasoned cornmeal or flour, they were pan-fried until golden and crispy, creating a contrast between the crisp exterior and delicate interior. Served alongside creamy, buttery grits, this combination became a hearty, comforting meal. The grits absorbed the flavorful drippings from the frog legs, turning humble ingredients into a satisfying dinner that stretched to feed the family. Beyond flavor, the dish showcased the ingenuity and resourcefulness of rural cooks, turning local ingredients, often foraged or hunted, into meals that were not only filling, but also deeply rooted in Appalachian culinary tradition and seasonal availability. Number 11. Chicken-fried deer steak. Venison was a prized protein in hillbilly kitchens, and chicken frying transformed lean deer steaks into a crispy, flavorful meal. Steaks were pounded thin, seasoned, dredged in flour, and fried in hot lard or oil until golden brown. The result was a tender interior with a crunchy exterior, often served with pan gravy, fried vegetables, or potatoes. This dish exemplified the ingenuity of rural cooks, stretching a single deer to feed multiple meals. Number 12. Tomato gravy over biscuits with cured pork. In hillbilly kitchens, biscuits were more than breakfast. They were the foundation for hearty dinners like tomato gravy with cured pork. Bits of smoky pork, sautéed with onions and a touch of fat, flavored a simple tomato-based gravy, poured generously over soft, flaky biscuits. The combination was comforting, filling, and affordable, turning pantry staples into a meal the whole family could enjoy. Simple seasonings like salt, pepper, and a pinch of sugar elevated the dish without complexity. More than sustenance, it embodied the ingenuity of rural cooks, proving that even modest ingredients could create a satisfying, memorable dinner rooted in tradition and the warmth of home. Number 13. Wild ramp and potato soup. Spring brought ramps, the wild, pungent onions treasured in hillbilly kitchens, and potato soup was a perfect way to showcase them. Ramps were carefully cleaned, chopped, and simmered with diced potatoes, onions, and sometimes salt pork or bacon for added richness. Slowly cooked, the soup became earthy, fragrant, and deeply nourishing, stretching simple ingredients into a meal that could feed the entire family. This dish wasn't just about sustenance. It celebrated the first fresh greens of the season. Number 14. Clay pot cornbread with smothered beans. Cornbread baked in a clay pot developed a golden, rustic crust that made it perfect for pairing with smothered beans. Pinto or field beans were slowly simmered with onions, salt pork, and sometimes a touch of molasses, creating a rich, savory sauce that soaked into every bite of cornbread. This one-pot meal was both economical and hearty, turning simple pantry staples into a filling dinner for the whole family. Number 15. Pickled pig's feet with mustard greens. Pickled pig's feet were a testament to hillbilly ingenuity, turning a tough, inexpensive cut into a tangy, flavorful dish. Slowly simmered in vinegar, spices, and sometimes onions, the feet absorbed every bit of seasoning, creating a rich, gelatinous texture. Served alongside mustard greens, simmered with a touch of smoked meat or bacon, the meal was hearty, nutritious, and deeply traditional. It was economical yet satisfying, showing how rural families made the most of every part of the hog. Number 16. Hog maw, stuffed pig stomach. Hog maw or stuffed pig stomach was a hillbilly specialty born from thrift and ingenuity. The stomach was cleaned thoroughly, then filled with a mixture of cornmeal, sausage, onions, and seasonings before being slow cooked until tender. What might seem like an unusual cut today was a prized centerpiece, stretching inexpensive ingredients into a meal that could feed a large family. Served with boiled vegetables or cornbread, hog maw was hearty, filling, and deeply flavorful. Number 17. Potato and onion bake with salt pork crust. In hillbilly kitchens, simplicity met ingenuity in the potato and onion bake with a salt pork crust. Thinly sliced potatoes and onions were layered in a dish, seasoned with salt, pepper, and herbs, then topped with strips of salt pork to add flavor and fat. Baked slowly until the potatoes were tender and the pork crisped, the dish became a hearty, filling dinner that stretched modest ingredients into a satisfying meal. Each bite carried a balance of savory richness and earthy comfort. This bake exemplified the resourcefulness of rural cooks, showing how humble vegetables and preserved meat could be transformed into a timeless, flavorful meal for the family. Number 18. Turnip greens with cracklings. Turnip greens were a staple in hillbilly kitchens, especially when paired with cracklings, the crispy bits of fried pork fat leftover from rendering lard. The greens were simmered slowly with onions, garlic, and seasonings, absorbing the smoky, savory richness of the cracklings. Often cooked for hours, the result was tender, flavorful greens with a depth that modern shortcuts rarely replicate. Served alongside cornbread or boiled potatoes, this dish was nourishing, economical, and steeped in tradition. Beyond its taste, it represented the ingenuity of rural cooks. Number 19. Biscuits and red-eye gravy. Biscuits and red-eye gravy were a classic hillbilly breakfast that often doubled as a hearty dinner. The biscuits, flaky and buttery, were baked fresh or pan-fried, providing a warm base for the gravy. Red-eye gravy, made from the drippings of fried country ham mixed with strong black coffee, created a sharp, savory sauce that soaked into every biscuit. Simple seasonings like black pepper enhanced the flavor without masking the richness of the meat. This dish was inexpensive, filling, and deeply satisfying, a perfect example of rural ingenuity. Every bite carried the comfort of home, tradition, and the resourcefulness of cooks who turned a few ingredients into a meal cherished across generations. Number 20. Roasted rabbit with root vegetables. Roasted rabbit was a hillbilly favorite, especially for families who hunted for their supper. The rabbit was seasoned simply, salt, pepper, maybe wild herbs, and roasted slowly with carrots, potatoes, and turnips until tender. The vegetables soaked up the savory juices, creating a rich, comforting meal that filled hungry bellies. It wasn't fancy, but it was hearty, practical, and deeply rooted in Appalachian tradition. Proof that simple ingredients and patience could turn wild game into something truly special. Number 21. Cornpone with molasses butter. Cornpone was a staple in hillbilly kitchens, dense, rustic, and baked in a cast iron skillet. Served warm with a generous spread of molasses butter, it turned simple cornmeal into a sweet, comforting treat. Perfect alongside beans, greens, or fried meats, this combination was filling and economical. Beyond taste, it showcased Appalachian ingenuity, transforming humble ingredients into a memorable meal. Each bite carried the warmth of home, tradition, and the resourcefulness of rural cooks. Number 22. Ham and lima bean stew. Ham and lima bean stew was a hillbilly classic, perfect for stretching leftovers. Cured ham or salt pork simmered with lima beans, onions, and simple seasonings until tender and flavorful. Sometimes a touch of molasses or vinegar added depth. This hearty, filling stew fed the whole family while making the most of inexpensive ingredients. Beyond nourishment, it reflected rural ingenuity, turning modest pantry staples into a comforting, memorable meal rooted in Appalachian tradition and the resourcefulness of hillbilly kitchens. Number 23. Fried eggplant with salt pork drippings. Eggplant, a late summer favorite, was often pan-fried in rich salt pork drippings. Sliced and lightly seasoned, it developed a crispy golden exterior while staying tender inside. Sometimes onions or a dusting of cornmeal added extra flavor. Served with cornbread or beans, this simple dish became a hearty, satisfying meal. Beyond its taste, fried eggplant with salt pork drippings showcased Appalachian resourcefulness, turning humble garden vegetables and preserved meat into a comforting, flavorful dish cherished in hillbilly kitchens. Number 24. Cabbage and potato skillet with bacon. Cabbage and potatoes, staples in hillbilly kitchens, became a hearty meal when cooked with bacon. Chopped cabbage and diced potatoes were sautéed in bacon fat with onions and seasonings until tender and flavorful. The smoky richness of the bacon infused the vegetables, creating a satisfying, filling dish. Served with cornbread or as a side, it exemplified rural ingenuity, turning simple, affordable ingredients into a comforting meal steeped in Appalachian tradition and the resourcefulness of home cooking. Number 25. Pond-caught base with herb butter. Freshwater base, caught from local ponds or streams, was a prized hillbilly meal. Pan-fried or baked, the fish was topped with herb butter made from garden herbs, garlic, and a pinch of salt. The butter melted into the flaky fish, enhancing its natural flavor. Served with boiled potatoes or cornbread, this simple dish was both celebratory and nourishing. Pond-caught base with herb butter showcased Appalachian resourcefulness, turning locally sourced ingredients into a flavorful, memorable, home-cooked meal. Number 26. Apple butter biscuits with country ham. Flaky biscuits served with sweet, tangy apple butter and salty country ham were a hillbilly favorite. The biscuits provided a soft, buttery base, while apple butter, slow-cooked from local apples, added natural sweetness. Thin slices of cured ham brought smoky, savory richness, creating a perfect balance. This simple, filling combination was enjoyed for breakfast or dinner, celebrating local ingredients and Appalachian ingenuity. It turned humble pantry staples into a comforting, flavorful dish steeped in tradition. Number 27. Fried chicken gizzards with onion gravy. Chicken gizzards, a humble protein, were cleaned, seasoned, and fried until golden and crisp. Paired with a savory onion gravy made from pan drippings, the dish became hearty and flavorful. Served with cornbread or potatoes, it was filling and budget-friendly. Beyond taste, it showcased hillbilly ingenuity, turning inexpensive, overlooked cuts into a comforting, traditional meal rooted in Appalachian kitchens and family heritage. Number 28. Pumpkin soup with bacon crumbles. Pumpkin, a garden staple, became a creamy, flavorful soup when simmered with onions, garlic, and sometimes potatoes or turnips. Crispy bacon crumbles sprinkled on top added smoky richness and texture. Served with cornbread or biscuits, it was hearty and satisfying. Number 29. Venison stew with root vegetables. Venison, hunted from local forests, was simmered slowly with carrots, potatoes, turnips, and onions, creating a rich, hearty stew. Sometimes a splash of vinegar or molasses deepened the flavor. This filling, economical dish could feed a family after a long day and made the most of wild game. Number 30. Blackberry cobbler with cornmeal crust. Blackberry cobbler was a cherished hillbilly dessert, made when wild blackberries were ripe. The berries were sweetened lightly and topped with a rustic cornmeal crust that baked golden and crisp. Served warm with butter or cream, it was simple, satisfying, and seasonal. Beyond flavor, this cobbler celebrated the land's bounty and Appalachian ingenuity, turning humble ingredients into a comforting, traditional treat enjoyed by families for generations.